So I remember this one time I was headed for school, and just that morning I sort of woke up, and the first thing I did was I grabbed my phone and I started searching for porn. And first it started with the Instagram and just sort of looking for half naked girls. Then it moved on to, searching it up, and then I sort of started watching, videos. And I didn't just watch any freaking sort of porn. I watched like the worst of the worst. I used to watch anime porn. Just like this hyper stimulating fucking bullshit, right? And I remember that day I didn't finish on time. And so, my alarm rings, so I have to prepare myself for school. And I basically start preparing myself for school whilst, sort of not having finished. And so I end up going to school, and I was 14 back then. So this was like a year before I started self-improvement. And I find my toxic friends and I sort of sit with them. And obviously, like, they talked about porn all the time, so it's sort of like just an open thing that we talked about. And so they were sort of talking about girls and shit, and I sort of mentioned what I was sort of fucking doing in the morning, and they laughed it off. And as I sort of went in the class, sort of, supposedly supposed to start the fucking, like the first class, like we were supposed to start the fucking school day, I started getting the urge again to go ahead and fap. And I basically go ahead, I take my phone, I put it in my pocket, and I tell the teacher that I want to go to the bathroom. And I'm not even taking the piss. I go to the fucking bathroom, and I continue on putting the porn, and I fap in the school bathrooms. And bro, the way that I just sort of fucking went back to the class, and I'm like, like walking in the fucking alleyways, and like, I can't even like look the students in the eye because I know what I just fucking did in the bathroom. It's just sad. And I went and I sat back in my seat in the class, in my own fucking corner at the very end of the class, because I didn't like fucking looking at anyone and doing anything and having any kind of attention on me. I was very depressed at that time. And sort of starting self-improvement, things have changed significantly. I started to learn about all these different habits, and amongst those was this very specific habit I'm going to talk to you about today, which had ended up basically destroying all the addictions that I had. And the thing is it's a very big combination of these addictions. It's the video game addiction, the porn addiction, the social media addiction, junk food addiction. There were all these different addictions that I had, which all had been exterminated by this habit. And I'm not only saying that this is the only thing that changed them, but this was a big part of it. This was a very big part of the reason why these addictions had gone, now sort of years later, away and out of my life. So 2 years ago, I made a couple of videos where I basically talked about dopamine detoxing, mental health, all these kind of different things. They were basically like these full guides. And I'm sort of just going through, sort of that phase of sort of just starting self-improvement. And I was sort of going through all this kind of shit, like just newly. So I was getting rid of all these addictions. And I actually, in those videos, I mentioned the 4 essential habits about fixing your mental health. And those habits were obviously journaling, meditating, exercising, and basically learning. So reading, watching educational podcasts that are long, that kind of thing. And the habit that basically is the most effective in terms of addictions is actually meditation. And you'd be surprised because it sounds pretty retarded. When you imagine meditation, you just imagine some monk sat there on a rock and he's like doing this and he's like freaking meditating. But meditation, the type of meditation we're going to be talking about today, is very different from what you sort of expect. The truth is, meditation had changed my life back then, and it still has to this day. Meditation had made me so much more aware of my own thoughts. And like, this is kind of like, this is going to sound stupid, but are you actually aware of your thoughts? Because you'd be surprised at the amount of thoughts that come in, which you are not very aware of. The intrusive thoughts that you have, the actual thoughts that you have, when you sort of sit there and you sort of envy this person, you're not really aware that you're actually envying this person, or when you're sort of annoyed at this person, but you can't just put a finger on it. It's these kinds of things that when you start to meditate, you start to have a lot more awareness of your thoughts. And more so importantly, you start having awareness over when you get the triggers. You see, triggers are basically when you get triggered to do the addiction, when you get that urge to do the addiction, to fap, to scroll on social media, to text the girl, whatever, right? And when you sort of are aware of your thoughts, you can catch exactly the moment that you have that thought and basically choose to not do it. Because it all starts with that thought. It starts when you have that thought of you saying, oh, I really want to fap, I really want to watch porn. And then if you're not aware of it, and if you don't say no to it, and if you don't immediately just jump to something else so that you don't do it, you will basically end up doing it because you're sat there, you're doing nothing, and eventually your hand is going to slip to the phone, you're going to grab it, you're going to put some fucking porn, and you're going to end up fucking jerking off. And so if you don't do something the moment that that thought hits, then, you're basically going to end up doing the habit. Which is why I advocate for having a routine and basically having your day full of all kinds of different things so that you can't have time to do these addictions. But meditation is the very act of training the ability to focus on thoughts and to be aware of your thoughts. So when you have a thought, you can immediately catch it and say, no, I don't want to do this. And so meditation is very powerful. And it especially also will help you in terms of, it helps you in everything, but when you sort of have the urge to fap, the urge to, order some junk food, the urge to, there are so many different things that we have different urges that when you meditate, you can just catch these thoughts immediately. And it'll even sort of stop you from, sort of having the thought, oh, I don't really want to go to the gym today. You immediately catch that thought and you can actually say, we're going to the gym anyway, no matter what you say. And so it's a very powerful habit. And the good thing about it is you could really only do it for about 5 minutes a day and still get those effects. And so meditation is very powerful. Some people will do it as long as 30 minutes a day, even an hour a day for some fanatics. But I don't really care about doing it, for as long as 30 minutes and whatever. I'm happy with 10 to 15, sometimes 20 minutes to really get me set for my day and actually being able to focus. Obviously, when starting, you won't even need to fucking do it for that long. 3 minutes, 5 minutes could be more than enough to get you these effects. And so meditation is a very powerful habit. And once you get into it, you will really start to see the world differently because you'll be for once just awake to all these kinds of different thoughts that you have. And I remember in the period when I got broken up with by my ex-girlfriend, I used to get so many intrusive thoughts. And back then I had stopped meditation, so I wasn't really that aware of my thoughts. And I was sort of would journal, which was kind of like a decent thing that I did. Obviously, journaling is a really powerful habit. And the journaling helped, but I wasn't able to catch the thoughts in time. And so often I'd end up fapping, I'd end up doing all these kinds of different things after I sort of fell off. And thankfully now sort of coming back to self-improvement, coming back to meditation, it's been ever since I started self-improvement again, I came back to self-improvement, which was back in February. Now it's the 25th of March. I haven't fapped since. I haven't done a single bad habit since. And so very powerful. And obviously, I've left these habits before, so perhaps it's a little easier for me to get back to these kinds of things. And it might take a little more time for you to sort of adjust. And obviously don't use this as an excuse to fall back into those habits. But, having done these habits for years, don't expect them to obviously go in a single day. Although you should obviously don't use this as an excuse. So here's exactly how you meditate. You basically find a place that's not so noisy that you can sort of sit there without much distraction, with no people preferably around you that will talk to you or that will tell you, whatever, people talking to you. Try and sit in a place where you won't be bothered, where you won't be hearing some noises and you'll sort of get distracted easily. Try and make this as easy as possible on yourself. And so sit, comfortable place, no noise, preferably, and basically set a timer for however long you want to do the habit. And then basically you'll close your eyes And what we will be doing, essentially why we close our eyes, is because we want to limit inputs. We want to limit distractions so you can focus on our breath. And the whole practice is essentially just us sitting there and focusing on our breath. We'll be focusing on us inhaling and exhaling. That's literally it. And obviously, when we sort of do this, in a few minutes or sometimes a few seconds, we will sort of get distracted. So we'll be focused on our breath, and in like fucking 10 seconds, you'll start thinking about some random thing. Start thinking, oh, like my father, I had this conversation with my father. Or, like I want to go to the bathroom after I'm with this. Or I want to eat. Or, yeah, what am I going to eat? Oh, I need to think about this. Oh, like, do I want to go to the gym today? And you'll start having all these different thoughts. And essentially, once you sort of realize that you're thinking about these different things, you don't continue the conversation in your head. You simply just bring back the focus back to your breath. You cancel out the fucking conversation. And you just focus back on your breath. And this essentially is just how you meditate. You keep doing this till your timer rings. And the more reps, the more times you can get distracted and come back to focusing, this is like one rep of sort of like for your mindfulness, for your presence. And so if you can do this as many times as possible, and sort of like that's why the longer you do it, the better, you will sort of start to get these more like these reps in, and that will help you to become more mindful and more present. And presence is essentially what we talked about, where we sort of are, aware of our thoughts, and we sort of cancel out these thoughts that we don't really want to engage in right now. And that's it. You do this for however long you really sort of want to, and you basically do this habit daily. Sometimes people will do this multiple times a day, but you could do this daily. You could just do this every single day. Do it for 5 minutes starting and work your way up to 20, 30 minutes. You'll be good. And even if you are on a busy day and you can't really do it, doing 5 minutes is more than enough. And so it's a really powerful habit, meditation. And I always talked about this starting the channel because I really do fucking love this habit. And it's honestly one of those habits that our society needs so much these days, because people are just on their phones all the fucking time. They have so many different addictions. They basically have phone addiction. Like they're literally addicted to their phones. They're addicted to social media. They're addicted to video games. They're addicted to all kinds of different stimulation that is on their devices. And even sort of junk food, all these kind of different things that are not even linked to the phone. Watching, TV, watching series, watching movies, watching anime, watching whatever. All these kinds of different things are distractions. These are the kinds of things that we stop when we do dopamine detoxing. Because when we sort of want to fix our mental health, which is one of the main things that we do to quit these addictions, we end up basically bringing our well-being up, because our dopamine is basically understanding dopamine, you sort of get the high and then you sort of have a lower baseline of happiness as sort of before you did the habit. And so essentially what you do is you just sort of keep lowering your baseline until eventually you become depressed. That's how people become depressed. It's not by just a fucking magical illness that you catch. It's a real fucking thing that happens because of the things that you fucking do to yourself. From these fucking, social media, video games, all these kind of different things, right? The bad habits. And essentially when we sort of get rid of these bad habits and we start doing these good habits like meditation, journaling, exercising, reading, all these kinds of different things, and we fill our day up with these habits, we become much more happier. We have an overall well-being that is far superior to what we had before we sort of did this. And, that's obviously the main thing that I advocate for on the channel. This is how you start self-improvement. You start by fixing your mental health. Because when you fix your mental health, the rest of the shit is basically settled. And so I really want you to just sort of start doing this. And when you start doing this habit, never fall, never quit this habit, never skip a day. Try and always get it. Even if you do it for 1 minute a day, it's still better than not doing at all. And so this habit is absolutely wonderful. And you will not regret doing this every single day. You will start to see these benefits, all these kinds of different benefits of when you sort of start to meditate almost instantaneously. And so don't fucking, skip this habit. Make sure you have a reminder for it, a certain time that you always do this habit so you don't fucking quit it. And you can watch all the different full guides, the old full guides that I had about how to quit addictions, how to build habits, all these kind of different things, self-improvement. guide. Always, like I've got plenty of guides on these kinds of different things. And so you can basically check out these full guides and all these different small guides to essentially understand more about this topic. And that's really all there is to it. And so as long as you commit to the work, you'll be getting your results.